Welcome back to the Drone MBA podcast. My name is Dr. Heather Monthi. I am your host for this podcast. And in today's episode, what I wanted to do is just give you 5 really quick things to know if you received a drone as a Christmas gift, as a birthday gift, as any kind of gift, or even if you gave somebody a drone as a gift, some of the things that you need to know. So I made a post on social media. You can go to any of our social media outlets, Electric Monarch Drone Education. And I've got a carousel on there that's got all of these different tips, but I wanted to make an episode and let's just talk through it very quickly, what you got to know. So this is going to be relevant for you regardless of what country you're in. So it's important to know if you're brand new to aviation, if you're brand new to drones, it's important to know that each country has its own aviation authority. So if you're in the United States, it's the Federal Aviation Administration. We'll talk about who that is if you're in Canada, Australia, wherever you may be. And you'll need to research what the requirements are for drones in your country. So in the US, you are required to take a little course, a little mini course, I would call it, to kind of learn the rules of the road to fly your drone recreationally. So, and if you want to fly it as for commercial reasons, so in the furtherance of a business, money doesn't need to exchange hands, but it's in the furtherance of a business. You do need to get the remote pilot certificate with the small unmanned aircraft systems rating, which is sometimes called the Part 107 certificate. So that's in the US. So in your country, wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, we have listeners in 38 countries. So I can't possibly go over the regulations for every single country. So this is just going to be some general guidance on what you need to do regardless of what country you're in. All right. So let's get started. The first thing is to look into the registration requirements for your country. Do you need to register your drone? In the US, you'll need to register it if it weighs more than 250 grams and if it weighs less than 55 pounds. If it weighs more than 55 pounds, you start getting into, is this an actual aircraft? And it needs an actual aircraft registration. So that's a little bit different. So what we're talking about here are small unmanned aircraft systems. So anything under 55 pounds are about 25 kilograms. So in your country, wherever it is that you're listening from, you'll want to go to your Aviation Authority website and determine whether or not you need to register your drone. Number 2 is to know the flying rules in your country. Now, you have to remember that you are flying your drone in airspace that there are manned aircraft. So that means there are airplanes and helicopters and hot air balloons and gliders and all of these things that are up flying around that have people in them. So as you're operating your drone, you want to make sure that you understand the rules and regulations because we don't want to put those people's lives in danger. We don't want to put your life in danger. We don't want to put the people on the ground. We don't want to put their lives in danger. So you want to make sure that you research the rules for your particular country. Know where you can and cannot fly. Understand where the rules might change if you're around an airport, if you're around a populated area such as a stadium, things like this. So you want to make sure that you really truly understand what those rules are, understanding things like visual line of sight, and that you need to maintain that ability to see your drone. You're standing here on the ground, you can still see your drone. I don't need a telescope. I don't need binoculars to see my drone. So that's called visual line of sight. So you want to make sure that you understand what those rules are around flying around other aircraft, flying over groups of people, flying over stadiums, things like that. Whether or not you're flying recreationally or commercially, you should know what those rules are in your country. The third thing is to obtain a license or certificate as required in your country. So many countries have a certificate that you'll need to earn, even if you're flying recreationally. And again, the idea is to help you make sure you understand the rules and regulations. You're flying around where there's human beings, and we want to make sure that everybody's lives are safe. So you want to make sure that you research what those licenses and certificates are in your country. If you're going to use your drone in furtherance of a business, so for example, if you're a photographer and you want to start adding in drone photography services, if you are a farmer and you want to use your drone to survey your crops, anything that you're using your drone for in furtherance of a business, money does not need to exchange hands. That becomes a commercial operation. Okay. And then you'll need the commercial certificate, whatever it might be in your country. So if you're in In the US, again, it's the FAA Part 107 certificate. If you're in other parts of the world, sometimes it's called a remotely piloted aircraft certificate. You'll hear some of those different terms. But again, if you go to your aviation authority website for your country, you'll know exactly what they call it and what the requirements are to get that certificate. And number 4, like I've mentioned many, many times already, is visit your aviation authority's website. So I listed a couple on my Instagram, LinkedIn, social media post. I'll put the links in the show notes here, but in the United States, it is the Federal Aviation Administration. You can go to faa.gov/UAS, and it's got all sorts of information about flying unmanned aircraft systems. Canada we've got tc.canada.ca. Transport Canada's got some information there about flying drones in Canada. Europe's got the EASA, which is the European Aviation Safety Agency, easa.europa.eu. And then Australia is the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, or CASA, and that's available at casa.gov.au/drones. Well, if you're not certain who your aviation authority is, just go to Google, go to the internet, just type in the name of your country and then aviation authority, and that organization will come up. Look for what kind of regulations they have around drones, and then you can start doing some research there to figure out what it is that you need to do. And then number 5, I have to put in a little plug here for our Facebook group. So the number 5 is to join a community for drone pilots. So I do have a Facebook group called the Business Strategies for Drone Pilots Facebook group. It is intended to be for people who are working on either starting a business, growing a business, or even starting a career in drones. So maybe you're not interested in starting a business, but you're interested in figuring out how you can break into this as a career. We've got a great Facebook group for you there. I'll put the links in the show notes, but you can just go to Facebook and search for Business Strategies for Facebook pilots there. So again, the big key takeaways here is that just because you got a drone for Christmas, for your birthday, whatever reason you were gifted a drone, even if you're not going to use it in furtherance of a business, there are some things that you should be aware of. Regardless of what country you're in, you want to make sure that you're flying safely. A reminder that you are flying in the same airspace that many manned aircraft pilots are in. I heard somebody say to me, well, drones are supposed to stay below 400 feet AGL or above ground level, and aircraft fly at 500 feet AGL and higher. And I said, when airplanes are landing and taking off, they're flying below that. So thank you for joining me on today's episode of the Drone MBA podcast. We're glad to have you here as part of the aviation world, and I'm glad to guide you along in your journey. So please make sure to share this episode with somebody that you think might find it helpful, somebody that maybe you gifted a drone to, somebody that maybe just received a drone, just so that we can share the love and share the information on what you need to do to get started in drones.